The night the first ship fell, the sky burned. It came not as a fiery streak of destruction, but as a silent, shimmering tear in the fabric of the heavens. The year was 1347, and the world was too busy dying to notice. The Black Death slithered through Europe, emptying villages, choking the life from kings and peasants alike. When the vessel descended over the dense forests of Transylvania, its hull humming with a sound just beyond human hearing. Only one man witnessed its arrival. His name was lost to time, but the watchers remembered. The being that emerged was neither angel nor demon, though it would be called both in the centuries to come. Tall, its skin the color of twilight, it moved with an eerie grace, its eyes reflecting the stars it had once sailed between. It did not speak, not with words, not then. Instead, it pressed a single elongated finger to the dying man's forehead, and in an instant, his pain vanished. His plague-ravaged body stilled, his breath steadied, and then the being did something unexpected. It smiled. By dawn, the ship was gone, buried beneath layers of earth and time. The man lived another 60 years, never aging, never falling ill again. He would become the first of many. The Watchers had arrived, and they would never leave. The Watchers, Chapter 1, The Stranger in the Coffee Shop, New York City, 2024. The coffee shop was loud, in the way only New York could be. A symphony of grinding beans, impatient footsteps, and overlapping conversations. Liam Carter barely noticed. He was too busy staring at the woman in the corner. She wasn't just beautiful. She was wrong. Not in any way he could explain, at first. It was the little things. The way she held her cup, too still. As if she'd forgotten it was there. The way her eyes flickered across the room, scanning faces with an intensity that felt more like calculation than curiosity. And then there was the light. Every time the overhead fluorescence hit her irises at the right angle, they glowed, just for a fraction of a second. A faint silver shimmer, like distant starlight caught in glass. Liam rubbed his tired eyes. He'd been working late again, chasing dead-end leads for his podcast. The Hidden Signal. Another deep dive into conspiracy theories no one cared about. Maybe he was hallucinating. Maybe he needed more sleep. But then she looked directly at him and smiled. It was the same smile from his dreams, the one he'd been sketching in the margins of his notebooks for months without knowing why. Before he could react, she stood, leaving her half-finished coffee behind. Her movements were too fluid, too precise. Like a dancer who'd rehearsed every step of existing among humans. She walked past his table, dropping a single folded note in front of him. Liam waited until she was gone before opening it. 3 words, written in ink that shimmered faintly under the light. You see us. Outside, the city roared on, oblivious. But Liam's world had just split open. Chapter 2, The Forgotten Bloodline. Liam's hands shook as he dialed his grandfather's number. The old man had spent his life obsessed with patterns in history. Wars that started over nothing, genius inventors who vanished without a trace, plagues that burned out too fast. He'd called it the ripple effect. The phone rang twice before a gravelly voice answered. Took you long enough. Liam froze. You expected my call? A dry chuckle. Not the call. The seeing. It's schizogeneration. Your father never noticed them. But you. A pause. What did she look like? The question hit Liam like a bucket of ice water. How did he? Eyes like fractured glass, Liam whispered. Too perfect. Too still. His grandfather exhaled sharply. Meet me at the bunker. And Liam, don't trust the reflections. The bunker was a rusted shipping container buried under his grandfather's upstate junkyard. Inside, newspaper clippings plastered the walls. Einstein's suspicious 1921 disappearance for 3 days. The sudden end of the Cold War. A list of tech CEOs who looked uncannily similar across decades. His grandfather lit a lantern. The flame cast jagged shadows, revealing something Liam had never noticed before, a symbol carved into the metal floor, a spiral swallowing its own tail. "They call themselves the Veil," the old man said. "Means thread. In a language that doesn't exist anymore. They weave history, nudge wars, accelerate science. And our family?" He pressed a palm to the spiral. "We're the snag in the fabric." Liam's breath caught. "Why us?" His grandfather reached into his coat and pulled out a photograph from 1945. A man who looked exactly like Liam stood beside Oppenheimer at Trinity. Same eyes, same scar on the left thumb. "Because we're not human." The lantern flickered. Outside, something scratched against the container's roof. 3 slow, deliberate drags of claws. Chapter 3. The Fractured Covenant. The scratching stopped. Liam's grandfather didn't flinch. Instead, he reached under the workbench and pulled out a rusted metal box. Inside lay a device that looked like a cross between a sextant and a tuning fork, its surface etched with the same spiral symbol. "They gave this to your great-grandmother in 1927, he said. "Told her if humanity would need it one day." A deafening thud shook the container. Dust rained from the ceiling. "What the hell is out there?" Liam hissed. His grandfather's hands trembled as he activated the device. A low hum filled the air, and the carvings on the floor began to glow. You ever hear of the Philadelphia experiment? Another impact. The metal wall dented inward. Liam's pulse roared in his ears. "You're telling me that was real?" "Not the way the stories say." The old man's eyes locked onto his. The ship didn't vanish. It phased. And something else came back in its place. The container door exploded inward. Standing in the moonlight was a figure out of nightmare, 7 feet tall, its skin shifting between solid and static, like a corrupted hologram. Its mouth stretched too wide when it spoke. "Little threads, you shouldn't remember." Liam's grandfather shoved the device into his hands. "Run, don't let them." The static thing moved faster than physics should allow. One moment, it was at the doorway. The next, its fingers, cold as deep space, closed around the old man's throat. The last thing Liam saw, before the spiral symbol flared blindingly bright, was his grandfather's lips forming 2 words: "Find Prague." Then the world dissolved into light. Chapter 4. The Clockwork Conspiracy. Liam gasped as solid ground rematerialized beneath him, cobblestones, slick with rain. The air smelled of wood smoke and something metallic. Gas lamps flickered against a night sky devoid of skyscrapers. A sign above a butcher's shop read, "Praha, 1589. "Not possible," Liam whispered. The device in his hand pulsed warmly, its spiral now glowing amber. He spun around and froze. The Prague astronomical clock loomed before him. But unlike the tourist attraction he'd seen in photos, this one moved with sinister precision. Its apostle statues weren't wooden. They were skeletal figures of polished brass, their hollow eyes tracking him. A hand clamped over his mouth from behind. "Breathe a word, and the chronophage eats you too," a woman's voice hissed in accented English. She dragged him into an alley where the shadows bent unnaturally, swallowing them whole. When she released him, Liam found himself face to face with a mirror image of the coffee shop woman. Same star-fractured eyes, but her skin was threaded with glowing silver scars. "You're one of them," Liam choked out. "I'm what they fear." She tapped her scars. "The Veil who remember. The ones who bled to stop the fracture." A distant scream echoed from the square. The woman didn't flinch. "That's the sound of your history being rewritten. The chronophage consumes timelines, starting with yours." She grabbed his wrist, pressing his palm against the clockwork device. The spirals aligned, and a holographic map flickered to life. A constellation of dates: 1347, 1589, 1945, 2024. "The fracture points," she said. "We break the loop here or humanity never reaches the stars." A brass apostle's head creaked into view at the alley entrance. The woman bared her teeth, literally, as her canines elongated into silver needles. "Run or fight, Threadling, but choose fast." Chapter 5. The Fractured Veil. Liam didn't have time to think. He chose fight. The brass apostle lunged, its joints screeching like rusted gears. The scarred veal woman moved faster. Her silver-threaded hands slashed through the air, and the apostle's head shadowed in a burst of cogs and blue-tinged oil. "You're not just a rebel," Liam panted. "You're something else." She wiped the oil from her face, revealing scars that pulsed like live wires. "I'm what happens when a veal remembers too much." A guttural roar echoed from the clock tower. More apostles were coming. No more questions. She grabbed his arm, her fingers burning cold against his skin. The chronophage feeds on fixed points in time, moments when the veal changed your history. This square, in 1589, the first mass disappearance. They took an entire generation of thinkers and reshaped them. Liam's stomach twisted. "You're saying the Renaissance was engineered?" "Stolen," she corrected. "And 2024 is the next fracture point. That's why the static thing hunted your bloodline. You're the anomaly." The ground trembled as the clock tower's doors burst open. Dozens of brass apostles spilled into the square, their movements synchronized like a single, monstrous machine. The veal woman pressed her palm to Liam's chest. Her scars flared white-hot. "I can give you the memories they erased. All of them. But it will rewrite you." Liam didn't hesitate. "Do it." Her fingers sank into his skin. The world exploded into fractured visions. A library in Alexandria burning too slowly, as if time itself resisted. A council of silver-eyed figures voting to erase 10,000 humans from history. Himself, in another life, standing beside the scarred veal as Prague burned. When Liam gasped back into the present, his left hand was threaded with glowing scars, and he remembered everything. The apostles froze mid-step. The clock's gears ground to a halt. "They sense you now," the veal woman whispered. "A forgotten king remembers his throne." Chapter 6. The Forgotten King. The scars burned like frozen fire along Liam's arm, pulsing in time with a heartbeat that wasn't entirely his own. The square around him blurred. 1589 Prague, flickering like a dying hologram, replaced by flashes of other fractures. A battlefield in 1812, where soldiers on both sides dropped their weapons mid-charge, staring at the sky in unison. A laboratory in 2073. Future? Past? Both? Where a child with silver-threaded eyes reached for a black hole contained in glass. Himself, older, clad in armor made of fractured timelines, standing before a council of veal who knelt. The scarred veal woman, Alara, her name returned to him suddenly, gripped his shoulders. "Focus, Anharak. The memory storm will consume you if you let it." Anharak. The title resonated in his bones. The Forgotten King. The hybrid. The first and last. The brass apostles began moving again, but slower now, their movements jerky, uncertain. "They don't know what you are anymore," Alara said, her voice fierce. "The chronophage tastes time, and you reek of paradox." Liam flexed his scarred hand. Reality warped around his fingers. The cobblestones rippled like water. "What did I do?" he whispered. "In the other timelines. Why do they fear me?" Alara's star-fractured eyes held something like grief. "You gave humanity free will." A shudder ran through the apostles. One by one, they collapsed, their brass shells crumbling to dust. The clock tower's face cracked down the middle, revealing a yawning void behind it. A tunnel of spiraling light. From the void emerged them. 3 figures in flowing silver robes, their faces shifting through 1,000 human visages. The Veal High Council, the architects of fractures. The center figure spoke with a voice that vibrated Liam's teeth. "You were erased. You do not exist." Liam felt the words try to unmake him. His scars flared in defiance. Alara bared her needle teeth. "Say the name, Anharak. Break the loop." The memory storm surged, and Liam understood. He raised his scarred hand. The spirals on the device matched the ones now burning in his veins. "Harak Veal," he declared. The void exploded into light. Chapter 7. The Shattered Crown. The light from the void didn't fade. It shattered, like glass struck by a hammer. One moment, Liam stood in 1589 Prague, his scars burning with the weight of 1,000 splintered timelines. The next, he was everywhere and nowhere, a ghost in the machine of history, watching his own life fracture into infinite reflections. A version of himself in a lab coat, dissecting a chronophage corpse in 2147. 2. A shadowed figure in medieval armor, leading an army of humans and veal against the High Council. A child with no eyes, whispering to the stars in a language that made galaxies tremble. Ilara's voice cut through the chaos, sharp as a blade. Choose a thread, Anheric, but choose wisely. This time, the crown comes with thorns. Then, the visions collapsed into a single horrifying scene. New York City, 2024. But not his New York. The skyline was wrong. The Chrysler Building had never existed here. People on the street wore pulsating neural interfaces grafted directly into their temples. A news hologram flickered above Times Square. Veal Integration Day, 10 years of peace under the Covenant. Liam stumbled back, straight into his own doppelganger. The other Liam wore a silver-trimmed uniform, his left hand fully scarred with luminous threads. His eyes were cold, familiar. "Took you long enough," the double said. "I've been waiting to kill you for centuries." Behind him, the sky cracked open, and the real fracture began. Chapter 8. The Architect of Fractures. The revelation hit Liam like a blade between the ribs. "You did this!" His voice was raw, the scars on his arm pulsing with erratic light. "All of it, the disappearances, the fractures, just to bring me back?" Ilara didn't deny it. Her silver-threaded scars glowed brighter as she stepped forward, the streets of this twisted 2024 rippling around her like a mirage. "You were supposed to lead us," she said, her voice trembling with something between devotion and madness. "The first hybrid, the bridge between veal and human. But the Council cut you from time itself. I had to undo it, thread by thread, century by century." The doppelganger in the silver uniform laughed, a sound like breaking glass. She didn't just undo it, she weaponized history. Every fracture point, every war, every erasure was a stitch in her grand design. He raised his own scarred hand. And the sky split further, revealing a writhing mass of half-formed timelines. And you were the needle. Liam's mind reeled. The coffee shop, the bunker, Prague. None of it had been chance. It had been orchestrated. Ilara met his gaze, her star-fractured eyes brimming with something terrifyingly human. "You asked why they feared you. It wasn't just because you gave humanity free will." She smiled, and for the first time, it looked wrong. "And it was because you were going to make them equal." The doppelganger lunged. Liam barely dodged, but the scarred veal wasn't aiming for him. She grabbed Ilara by the throat. "You broke the covenant," he snarled. "Now watch what happens when time fights back." The ground beneath them screamed, and the world dissolved into white-hot silence. Chapter 9. The Weaver's Gambit. Time hung suspended in the white void. Liam saw the fractions clearly now. Not as broken threads, but as choices. Every decision Ilara had twisted, every life she'd sacrificed to resurrect him, pulsed like wounds in the fabric of reality. The doppelganger's grip on Ilara tightened, his scars flaring with the same violent light that had once crowned Liam king. "She turned history into a noose," he spat. "Now it's her turn to choke on it." Liam stepped forward, not as Anheric the Forgotten King, not as a weapon or a pawn, but as the flaw in the design. He reached out and pushed his doppelganger into Ilara. Their bodies collided in a burst of silver light, timelines knitting around them like flesh healing over a wound. The doppelganger's furious snarl melted into Ilara's gasp of shock as their scars merged, their identities blurring. What do you do?" Her voice was no longer just hers. It echoed with the doppelganger's rage, with the High Council's whispers, with the screams of every soul erased to forge this moment. Liam exhaled. You wanted me to rewrite the ending? Fine. He pressed his palm to their tangled chest. But we do it together. The scars on his arm unraveled, threads of light spinning outward, not to fracture time further, but to mend. The visions came faster now. 1347, the first Veal ship never landed. The dying man in the forest took his last breath, and peace with it. 1589, the brass apostles crumbled to dust before they could harvest a single mind. 2024, a world where the words Veal Integration Day meant nothing, because the stars had stayed silent. Alara and the other screamed as the timeline sealed, their existence burning away like paper in flame. You'll die too, they howled, and Liam smiled. I know. The light consumed everything. Chapter 10. The Unwritten World. The coffee shop was loud in the way only New York could be. Liam Carter blinked, disoriented, as the barista shoved his latte across the counter. No scars, no memories of burning fractures, just the familiar weight of his podcast mic in his pocket and the lingering sense of a dream he couldn't quite recall. Across the room, a woman with ordinary brown eyes laughed at something on her phone. For a heartbeat, Liam thought he saw a flicker of silver in her gaze. Then it was gone. He took his coffee and stepped into the sunlight of a world that had never known gods from the stars. Somewhere in the space between seconds, a spiral faded quietly into myth. End. Author's note. The cost of guided progress. The Fractured Covenant is, at its core, a story about control and the seductive, dangerous belief that some lives are expendable in service of a greater future. The Veal mirror humanity's own historical and ongoing struggles. Who decides what progress looks like? The Veal's tampering echoes real-world technocratic arrogance, colonial erasure, and the silencing of marginalized voices for their own good. The violence of necessary sacrifices. Alara's betrayal forces us to ask, how many atrocities have been justified by the phrase, "it had to be done"? From unethical experiments to exploited labor, humanity's darkest chapters share her warped logic. The illusion of benevolent rulers. The Veal High Council's sleek, silver-robed authority mirrors modern power structures that claim infallibility, governments, corporations. Even algorithms that shape our lives without consent, but Liam's final choice offers a counterpoint. True evolution isn't engineered. It's chosen, freely, messily, together. As we stand on the precipice of AI, genetic engineering, and interstellar ambition, this story is a plea to question who guides us and what they're willing to break to do it.